This little girl was hospitalized in an extremely critical condition. The only way to escape the clutches of death was so painful that she had to have her internal organs removed. She even had to wear a colostomy for the rest of her life. In the end, how great a disaster had befallen this little angel who now had to struggle to survive. Will the sunlight warm her up again? What hope will help her overcome that psychological shadow? The story begins in 2008. In a corner of Korean, there was a small grocery store named Sowon. The family that owned the grocery store consisted of 3 people. The mother was a normal person who always shouldered everything. Every day, the mother was busy in the shop and worried about taking care of the family, so she was a bit hot-tempered and always complained about her husband. The father did hard work in the factory. He looked a bit silly. His hands and feet were clumsy, so he always made his wife uncomfortable. Every day after work, he just likes to lie on the sofa and watch football without helping his wife. Such a family but lives very happily. They gave birth to an angel girl. So one is in 2nd grade this year. An active girl. She is pretty and extremely smart. She understands things, so she doesn't blame her parents for being busy. Even her useless father can't tie her hair. Seeing the way he strokes her hair makes So-won angry, so she has to tie her own hair to go to school. So-won is about to be late for school, so she erases her hair, only clips it with a clip, holds a yellow umbrella and mumbles as she runs to school. On the way, her mother calls her back and apologizes and promises to tie her hair nicely tomorrow. Her mother said, "I would take you to school, but So-won said that I was already grown up." She knows her mother is busy and doesn't want her mother to worry, so she says she can run to school in 3 minutes. Even so, her mother was still worried and told her that even if it was late or the road was sad, she should take the main road, not the narrow shortcut. Even though life was sad, it could not stop So-won's cheerful steps. But she did not know that waiting for her in front of her was a devil from hell. The strange drunk old man stood in the alley near the school, silently watching each child go to school. The children without umbrellas ran quickly to school. On the road, only So-won was left. From under the yellow umbrella, the pretty girl looked up and saw an ugly middle-aged man holding a kite coming towards her. He pretended to ask So-won and said he wanted she to share the umbrella with him. The girl said she was late for school, but he still approached. The tragedy happened from here. Under the cold, heavy rain, the yellow umbrella broke. The pink bag fell to the ground. Her protests and cries for help were all drowned out by the sound of the rain. Blood, all sticky blood. So-won's blood-stained hands were barely able to reach for the phone. Only a few hours later, Mom and Dad received calls from the police. So-won's condition was very serious. She was in the emergency room and was half-conscious. When Mom arrived, Dad was already in the hospital. The doctor was saying that So-won's condition was very serious. They might have to remove her large and small intestines. Mom rushed to the hospital bed and saw her covered in blood. Her face was deformed. Her skinny legs were covered in blood. There were even large teeth marks on her cheeks. Mom So-won burst into tears. She couldn't control herself and fell down. She was in so much pain and pity for her little daughter. Dad So-won tried to stay calm so that he could grasp the whole situation. The police promised to find the culprit. Mom So-won was blaming herself for letting So-won go out alone in the rain. Mom So-won was going crazy. She loved So-won very much. Because he couldn't calm down, So-won's father left his wife outside and went into the operating room himself. The doctor said that she had to have an artificial anus implanted to save her life. So-won's father desperately trembled and begged the doctor to save his daughter. Luckily, the surgery was successful. So-won's mother only dared to look at her from the outside and then left. So-won's father entered the hospital room, grabbed So-won's hand and said that everything was fine. She even asked her father if it was okay for him not to go to work today. She said that she thought that her father and mother were busy at that time, so she called the police herself. That bad uncle had to be arrested. So-won was very sleepy but still tried to describe what he looked like. She hoped that her father would help her catch that bad uncle. She was afraid that the uncle would harm the other children. So-won's understanding made others feel heartbroken. So-won's father couldn't calm down either. He cried in pain and walked out of the hospital room. On this side, the police had found a few suspects. So-won's father rushed to the police station, but they said they couldn't arrest anyone because there were only fingerprints left at the scene and no arrest warrant, so they couldn't arrest anyone. The victim had to personally confirm it before they could make an emergency arrest. The mother didn't agree because she didn't want So-won to remember that painful memory anymore. It wasn't until the father said that So-won wanted to catch the bad guy that the mother was relieved. So-won's father went home to find So-won's diary and her favorite character Kokomong teddy bear to give to the psychologist. They decided to persuade So-won. The doctor wanted So-won to tell her what the bad guy looked like. Every time she asked, she looked at her parents to gain more motivation. After confirming that So-won was completely conscious and aware, the police brought the suspicious photos and So-won was able to point out the bad guy who harmed her. The doctor said that that So-Won might suffer from severe psychological trauma in the future. If possible, call her for help. So-Won's mother was very angry when she heard that. So-Won's mother returned the business card to the doctor and told her not to try to scare them. The police immediately surrounded the bad guy's house. As soon as he opened the window, 2 policemen jumped in and took him to the police station for investigation. After the bad guy escaped, the media attracted attention. News of the case was everywhere. An old man was arrested for raping and assaulting an 8-year-old girl. He had been arrested before for similar crimes. Because they were not well off, So-Won's parents moved her to a crowded room. The gossip of the people made her mother worried. So-Won's father on this side heard the news and looked outside to see a team of reporters on duty reporting the news. V's father rushed straight into the hospital room, covered her with a blanket, and pushed the bed out to escape the group of heartless reporters. He had just gone a short distance when a reporter saw him and chased after him. With no other choice, the father had to carry So-Won up and run up the stairs. So-Won's mother downstairs could only cry and beg them to spare her poor child. Poor So-Won just looked at the crowd in bewilderment and asked if her father had done something wrong. Of course not. Her father comforted her and told her everything would be fine. While moving, So-Won's stool bag broke. So-Won's father was always flustered and didn't know what to do, so he just took out a towel to wipe it. So-Won cried hysterically and told her father not to do that anymore and to stay away. Only then did So-Won's father realize something. So-Won unconsciously recalled her painful memories. A psychological barrier had been built in her heart. So-Won had an obsession with touching. She couldn't get close to men, not even her father. Her mother was also hospitalized after fainting. It turned out that So-Won's mother was 5 months pregnant. So-Won's father was heartbroken and did not expect his wife to have to endure such pain during her pregnancy. From then on, every time he talked to So-Won, he could only talk from a distance. So-Won felt both scared and ashamed in front of her father, so she covered herself with a blanket. Her father persistently told the little girl in her mother's belly that she was carrying So-Won's sibling, but he could not move her. Her father told So-Won to count to 10 and then take off the blanket to breathe some air. After saying that, he left the room and went to the hospital to pay the hospital bill. The hospital bill for the little girl for the past 2 weeks had put a lot of pressure on her father. Her father took out his phone and called a close colleague. The colleague also knew about the situation through the news on TV, so he was willing to help and even went to the hospital to take care of her. The difficult day seemed to have passed. The first day of the trial finally arrived. After hearing the whole story, the bad guy announced in court that he did not know anything. He drank and did not remember anything. Even the clothes and shoes he was wearing during the crime were gone. He was completely clueless. So-Won's father's colleague couldn't hear what he was saying anymore and directly took off the shoes and threw them at him. Yet this beast turned around with an innocent face as if he was challenging. While resting in his hospital room, So-Won came across the stuffed animals from the cartoon Kokomon that she loved the most. The animals were dancing happily, making So-Won finally smile. All the other little patients in the hospital standing outside felt jealous. It turned out that those stuffed animals were her mother's best friend, and the first policewoman who received the call from So-Won. Everyone was sweating, but they just smiled and continued to play with So-Won after finishing a sip of water. After returning from the trial without any results, So-Won's smile soothed her father's heart. Her father had found a way to make So-Won happy and recover, but the cost of renting the costume was too expensive. He asked the owner if you could lower the price. Luckily, the owner was a kind person, so he lent So-Won's father an old costume without paying. Not only that, he also encouraged So-Won's father to try harder. It turned out that the director had been in the same situation as So-Won's mother before. Her daughter had also been abused and had done something stupid. She wanted to follow her daughter, but only lost her legs. That was why she founded this mental hospital. She wanted to help children like her daughter. The father, wearing the Kokomon costume, shyly went to visit his daughter, but was afraid of being discovered. So he just wrote on the board that his friends had all gone home. So-Won sat up and wrote, "You should go home too. Your friends are waiting." And so Kokomon waved her hand and was about to leave. Suddenly, So-Won touched her father's hand and hugged him. This hug really burst out her father's love for her. They could only say goodbye to each other silently. From then on, every night, her friend Kokomon would come to visit and play with her. On sleepy days, So-Won would write to her bear friend and tell him that you need come back tomorrow. However, every time she stepped out of the hospital room, So-Won's father would be chased by other children. So-Won's health gradually recovered and she agreed to receive psychological treatment. The director brought a notebook with day and night inside. She told So-Won to stick a butterfly after each answer. Just stick enough in the dark and she would be able to sleep well. Although she had cleared up many knots in her heart, she only spoke when school was mentioned. She asked if she could go back to school. The girl felt ashamed of what had happened to her. She thought that all her friends knew and would play with her. What she didn't expect effect was that this fat boy had stopped playing happily since the incident. Although he used to tease and bully her, now he often came to her house and posted notes from class on her door. In fact, when the bad uncle stopped her, she also wanted to leave, but opening an umbrella for someone in the rain was the right thing to do. But everyone said it was her fault. After being discharged from the hospital, she wanted to go to school to see her friends, but all the bad rumors had already spread. She couldn't keep up with her friends' homework. She wanted to hold the baby after the baby was born, but she still had a carrier bag on her. So one was afraid that she would dirty the baby. So one was gentle and kind like an angel, even when bad things happen. What she wants most is not for herself but for the good things for the people around her. She hopes that after sleeping, all the pain will go away and everything will return to normal. That makes So one obediently drink all the bitter medicine and pray before going to sleep. Now she understands that every time her grandmother is in pain, grandma will say that I wants to die. Wants to die. People say that when there are still people alive to feel their pain, just like her. Although she hopes that everything will be fine, there is a big obstacle in her heart. Here at school, her friends and the people around So one are trying their best every day to help her. They hope to pass on the most positive things to her. Finally, the day of discharge came, but So one asked her mother if she could stay in the hospital. She was afraid of returning to the place that held painful memories. Knowing that So one was afraid of her father, So one's father delicately hung a curtain in front of her eyes. On the way, she couldn't hide her anxiety. When she passed the shortcut that So one had taken that day, she felt nauseous. That bad memory came back. When she got out of the car, So one threw up a lot. So one and her mother stood in front of the house, looking at the colorful papers with homework messages and good wishes. The house was also cleaned up to welcome them back. This chubby boy stopped by today to ask about So one. His father asked him if he wanted to visit So one, but he said he was just passing by. Suddenly, he burst into tears. That day, he was supposed to go to school with So one and nothing would have happened to her. He always felt guilty about what happened to So one. He cried louder and louder, so one's father had to hug and comfort him. Today So one returned to school. Everyone was worried. So one's mother's best friend led her slowly in front. Behind her were her boyfriends who silently followed behind to protect her. So one stood still in a daze in front of that alley and then turned around to see her father waving goodbye. This gave So one more motivation. So one pulled her aunt's hand and quickly went to school. So one's father also came and asked the teacher for permission to pay attention and take care of So one. At night, before going to bed, So one's father quietly put a lot of candy in So one's bag. He will make a sound to cover the noise of the urinal, helping the girl feel less embarrassed. Moreover, when her friends asked, So one could take candy out of her bag and offer it to her friends to eat. Today, her mother took her to the director. The director said that So one was gradually recovering very well. The director also advised So one's mother to be strong, not only to protect So one but also the unborn child. Every time during lunch break, So one's father would run out of the factory wearing the clothes she wanted to dance in the gym. When So one saw him, she would smile. She knew that there was always someone by her side. After school, So one said goodbye to her friends and someone called her. So one came over and asked if it was her father. She asked, "It's very hot in there, Dad?" The father inside was drenched in sweat and nodded silently. So one said it was because of her that her father had to do that to see her, right? She held Kokmong's hand and went home. So one's mother still didn't know that her father had always followed her to protect and motivate her. So one wiped her father's sweat with her small hands and smiled. Finally, her father's love had shaken her heart. The case is about to have a second trial. The court sent a summons to So one to testify because they don't trust the words of an 8-year-old girl. The criminal is experienced, so he relies on loopholes in the law. He uses alcohol poisoning as an excuse to reduce his sentence. So one's father goes to the prison cell of that devil and angrily asks why he can still shamelessly file a complaint after committing such a cruel act. This evil man has always denied what he did. He has a migraine when drinking alcohol, so he doesn't remember anything. He hasn't even asked So one's father if you came here to reconcile. He will be out of here very soon. This has provoked So one's father. So one's father holds a chair and repeatedly bangs on the glass door in anger. After returning home, So one's father asks his wife if she bought insurance because he has thought it over. If the trial was wrong, So one's father would personally intervene and demand justice for her. So one was still awake in her room. She quietly listened to her parents' conversation. The trial began. The judge called So one to testify. So one once again confirmed the criminal. But the person defending him asked her if he smelled of alcohol that day, and she nodded. Faced with all the evidence against him, he still hypocritically said that if he did that, he deserved to die. This bastard's words made the entire court angry. This bastard should have received a severe punishment for what he did. He should have been responsible for the lifelong pain of the victim and her family. After the girl's confirmation that he was drunk plus the report of alcohol poisoning, the judge, after synthesizing, gave a 12-year sentence. All the people watching the judgment were outraged. Someone's father's colleague stood up again and loudly scolded that only drinking alcohol would result in a severe punishment, but drinking alcohol would result in a reduced sentence. What kind of logic is this? Someone's mother, who was outside, rushed in after hearing this. 12 years later, Someone was only 20 years old. How was she supposed to continue living? Both Someone's father and mother were extremely agitated. Someone's father quietly stood up, picked up a name tag, and intended to deal with that bastard right there. But Someone hugged her father's leg and begged him not to do so. Someone, can I go home? It's not that Someone doesn't want to punish bad people anymore. It's just that she doesn't want everyone to be involved in her pain for too long. Someone's father couldn't hold back his anger and cried loudly. Someone's father hugged her and went home. Not long after, Someone's mother gave birth to a baby named Song. Hopefully, happiness would smile on this small family again. One afternoon, Someone felt unwell, so she left early. When she returned, her father was lying on the sofa watching football. Her mother was taking care of her younger brother. Someone took the plane she made herself to give to her younger brother. The sunlight shining through the window was warm. The movie ended here. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and see you again in the next videos.